Okay, let's try it again. Okay, it's on now. If you go back to it. Live, you're on. Yep. Good morning. Got a little problem getting it started this morning. How you doing? Welcome, welcome. Come on in. As you can tell, we're still out on the road. We've hit the bottom of Washington now. We're just a little bit above, right across a big bridge from the town that The Goonies was filmed in, Astoria. Yes. So, and we're still in the fog. Right now, there's sunshine hitting my face, but it's about to go. That's due east that way. So it's about to go right over the awning, and hopefully I won't have quite so much sun in my face. How you doing? All right. For those of you who have come before, welcome back. And someone who's just seeing it for the first time, well, we're glad you're here. Today, we're going to work on, let me get a camera going here. We're going to work on this one. Here it comes. There. It's a pretty basic one. I'm going to put the drawing up here in just a minute, but there's not really too much to draw. It's not really hard. I didn't shoot out any patterns this time, but we're just going to draw some very simple lines here. I made this one at an angle. You see how this is? Kind of three-sided. You don't have to. You can just put a bar like this that's square and then come down. But I'll show you how to do this one. So let's start. First of all, everybody should have their 5x7 piece of nice watercolor paper, like this one. Okay. And I have taped mine down. As you can see, it's all taped in place. I like to leave a little bit. There's about a 1/4 of an inch border there. And that way, when I take the tape off, it looks like a framed painting. So I get to see what it looks like. Everybody should be going to their watercolor, taking a little bit of water. If you don't have a squirt bottle, a small squirt bottle works best for this, but if you don't have one, just dip a little bit of water from your water container, water source, and put a couple of drops in each of your colors and do it early on. And that way they're nice and moist when we go to work, okay, when we start painting. But they need to sit this way for a little while. So we'll go ahead and get them all wet, which I already did mine. And we will, and then while that's sitting there, we'll do the drawing. Apologies. Let's see. I need to get back to this. Let's take it. I can barely see the screen that I'm working with here. So apologies to those of you who came or tried to come and watch last week or the week before. There was no video. We had a very a strange event, I guess, will happen. Something very odd to me, and that someone ran our right over our Wi-Fi antenna, the broadcasting part. They have a little square Starlink antenna that sits out, and a lot of people put them out by the street, and we put orange cones on the side of it in our campground. And somebody who came to camp across the street just, I guess, was nervous about backing up or wasn't paying enough attention, or who knows, maybe they're like me and just getting older. But they ran over it. And, well, the problem was that I'm going to go ahead and put the the drawing up for you here. There you go. Let's see. Get this stretched up a little bit, stretched out. Oops, not that one. That one. The problem was, here's the drawing if you want to start having a look at it. The problem was that we were 50 miles away from, 54 miles away from the nearest town that had a replacement part. But I'll tell you more about that later. So for right now, let's see if we can get this. I'm going to shrink this down and put it up in the corner and open up my page here. And there. How's that? I'll shrink it down just a little bit more and I'll show you what I'm doing here. And here we go. So here's the pattern. And I'm going to take that barn, the first part there, and just going to do that first. If you look at the pattern, here's the drawing or the painting. The barn itself is almost in the center, even it just barely overlaps the center to the right hand side. Just barely. I try to not put things in the center, but this area is my subject. You see this right here where the bright two roofs, those are really where I want the eye to go. Okay. And if you, for those of you who know, there's a art, a rule in art, the rule of thirds. So you try and divide this like a tic-tac-toe. You put lines across here and across here, and then across here and across here. Let's see if I can show you. I'll draw one here just so it shows up better. If I had this, the rule of thirds is kind of like this. And you try and put the main subject in one of these where the lines meet. So I put this one, as you can see, right here where that corner where they meet. So the first thing I'm going to do is try and get that barn in there, and it's kind of simple, and you don't have to do it exactly like mine. Don't have fear. I'm going to make a mark over here where I want the barn to end, and I'm going to come up here and make a mark where I'd like the top of the barn to be. And if you look at the top of the barn, I put it, I'm going to say slightly less than half. Maybe it's a little bit above half, way up on the page. So, and you don't have to make yours, like I say, you don't have to have it exactly like mine. It's got a slight slant to it to give it a little bit of perspective. And that's the peak, the roof right there, the peak. And now I'm going to say that the lower one, this roof right here, is just down, let's say, right, want it to cover part of the thing. So I'm going to want it right about here. Okay. Now you can sway these lines, like they were really old. I'll sway the side here a little bit, as the roof comes down, and make another line here. Am I drawing dark enough that you can see it? Let's see. I'll darken these up here in just a minute. So to make this angle, this first one is probably about 8 o'clock. Do you remember that? That's how many of you were in the class that I did that on? So if you take a clock, this is a good way to check where how your drawing's going. And you just make a regular clock with the times going around it. Then you can just take the minute hand and say, okay, that's the angle that I want that to be. And you can hold this up against something or look at something and be able to see. But I'll do a new class on that online so you guys can tell what that is, how that is. So I'm saying this first roof line, this line right here, you could do it at about, say, 8:30. Would be 8 o'clock here. So I'm going to split the difference and make that where the center line, well, it's not 8:30. It's, yeah, where the big hand would be between the 8 and the 9. You come out a little ways and then a little less. So now this one's going to be about 7 o'clock. And this one will be probably 6 o'clock. I know I'm going fast with that explanation, but I will make a class that has the that explains using the clock and the rule of thirds a little better at some point. This class is not that one. So, have you gotten this far? I'll give you a minute while I darken in these lines. The little building down here in front, I'm just going to bring down some lines. You can put a little slant on it like this if you want to kind of make it in perspective, but you don't have to. It's very small and close. Another thing you might do is put a few, as you're drawing, just put a few blades of grass aquí, like this, here. And we want a front on this one, right? And this arch should be a little higher than this arch. I guess it could come a little lower in perspective. There you go. And you can put some grass lines there if you want. Let's see, I put a small door in here. And a single window. I think I'm going to change the other side of my barn right there. I'm going to make it just a little bit wider. I'm going to pull this one out a little bit more, and then down, and then down. So as you can see, you don't need to draw the whole barn, or the whole building for that matter. I could have put a bit more bushes in front of this. I'm making my drawing very dark so you can see. Did everybody say hello to their neighbor? Did you come and have time to say hello to someone else who might be sitting next to you? You know, one thing you can do with these classes is just start watching them and invite a friend over. Make a cup of tea and sit and do a drawing together. It works out well for some folks. Sherry and our dog, baby girl, are right here next to me. And I think the dog wants to go somewhere or wants in the house. I'm not sure. But um, sadly, I can't get into the chat. We had a little problem with the YouTube this morning signing on. So I have to go get my email password or my password for Google, which is in the house. And where is it? Little red, my book cabinet up on top. And I'll try to sign into the chat, but I think I misclicked in YouTube and made something a little goofy. Okay, So if you have this done, this part, then up here, let's see, let's start with some of these. See these background trees? We're going to try and do layers of trees. See these back here? You don't really have to do all of this, these lines, but you can if you want to. I'm going to start a little higher than the barn, up on top, a little bit higher. Thank you. And I'm just going to kind of make some squiggly lines there just to give me an idea that, and you can think this through. You can think, what, where do I want the trees at? You know, because what you don't want to do, you don't ever want to just do this to where it's typewritten and all the same size. So what you want to do is put a high tree, and then a few low trees, maybe a high one or two high ones, and maybe not quite so high, and maybe come down a little bit and put a few trees. You want it to always change it up. Don't keep the same thing so it looks like you want it to look more like a loose pattern. These are very loose paintings. These are the kind of things you would do if you're urban sketchers like Sherry and I are. Okay. They're not meant to be super fine works of art. They're meant to capture a memory, right? You can do this from either a photograph. You can sit in your kitchen and get a memory of the way your living room looks, or you can go out traveling like Sherry and I do and make memories wherever you go. On this side over here, I put a kind of a spiky tree here, right? If you have these background trees in here, that's okay. And then over here, I'm going to change this from a spiky tree to kind of a deciduous tree on this side. No particular tree in mind right now. Just some kind of a outline that you can tell that this tree is in front of the barn, but it's behind the house. You don't, do you see my drawing here? Yes. Okay. There's the picture that she's talking about. The tree is in front of the barn, but behind the house. There's another little small shrubbery here or something, tree, something that is kind of behind the house or the little building, the outbuilding, but it also has a few branches that went over the building right there. Okay. So to do this bottom one, I'm just going to come in here and do the same kind of a thing. I'm just going to come in here and make some loose lines. And I'm just going to go over the edge of this right here. So this bush is here in front. And they're just loose lines. They don't really have to be exact. I'll give you a minute to try and, for a few of you, if you're still drawing. While I look for my Google sign in. I'm just starting to do these things again. And I'm telling you, there's a lot to it mentally as you get older. You know, I used to do these programs pretty easy with no struggles. And now I don't remember the passwords as well. That's right. Sooner or later, we'll have enough people I can get somebody else to help manage the thing. Oh, there we go. I should have remembered that one. Not yet. Google wants to make sure that it's me. Yes, it's me. And okay. And we should be back in the chat if anybody's out there that wants to talk. Okay. Everybody getting caught up on this so far? Next thing that we're going to try and put in here is these trees here that go in front of the barn. You see these? I put 3 of them, and the shape is not very delineated in this drawing, but they're kind of a very bushy evergreen. And um, I'll just put them in here and you can see what I'm talking about. Just going to put a loose wiggly line here that tells you there's this big evergreen here. Okay. And I'm going to leave it. I'm not really drawing the bottom, but it goes somewhere in there. There's another one. I'm going to change it up just a little bit because those trees I put there are too much the same size for me. So I'm going to move this one up here, make it smaller or lower down, and come a little bit lower than this one. And that way that'll bring it in front. And I'm going to put a second one or another one right behind it here. You see that? Did I make those dark enough? I don't normally draw this dark. I draw with my fountain pen, which I probably should be doing because you can see it better. But maybe I'll start doing that again next week. I don't know. So the guy ran over our Wi-Fi, and they were nice people. They paid us for it, but I spent the first day on YouTube trying to find out how to repair the Wi-Fi to save them some money, see if we could get it a little bit cheaper for them. And that didn't work. So then I called heck the Geek Squad with Best Buy, and I called them, and after hours of trying to get it to work, trying to get answers, they finally gave me someone who spoke English as a first language. And they said, you can just go to Best Buy, return that one because you bought the warranty package, return that one, they'll refund your money, and you can buy a new one. So, all right, let's go look at the sky here. Is everybody about finished with the drawing? One thing I forgot on the drawing, a couple of things here. Let's put in on the barn. You can barely see it because I make it so dark, but it's good for you to draw it there so you know it's there. There's a window up on top, probably where they bale hay, or I don't know. Maybe that's where they, you know, pitch things out. But I think they load hay in there, and there's usually on a barn, there's usually a stick sticking out here with a pulley on it that they hoist the bales up with. Anyway, there's a door down here. The big barn door is down toward the bottom. So I'm just going to indicate those by putting some kind of line down here and putting a line down the middle as though that were the barn door, right? And some kind of a small square up here where the window is. There's a 50-gallon drum full probably of trash, but maybe of tractor oil or something like that that sits right here. And put in a few fence posts. And again, I started them a little bigger. You can even make them bigger because these are in the foreground next to you. Do you want to go in?
Yes. You want something.
Yeah. You can just put them in and make them a little smaller as they come back to the toward the house. Just a few of them. They're just to make an indication. They really don't have to be anything. You do want at least one of them, maybe this last one, to point kind of toward your painting there. And if you want to, you can put some, I didn't do it on the original, but you can just put a line here and put squiggly bob wire going from one. And I like to put a loose end. And maybe there's some bob wire here going to this one. Maybe this one, the bob wire is missing and just curled up, but it might go to this one. And let's see, let's just put this one up on top and a little curled end on it. What do you think? This one I ad-libbed from a photograph that Sherry and I were flying down Highway 101, and this is in a little town called Orick, Oregon. I believe it's in Oregon. Uh, um, it's just on 101 on the to the left of us, a few miles or a mile or half mile away at that point is the ocean, the Pacific, and let's see, to the left, yes, because we were headed north, and to the right, we had we kept passing little barns and things like that, and we learned a lesson last year, and that was that when we did this last year, we took off, but we were so excited because we were on the coast and having a great time and saw so many things. We were towing the trailer, the little camp trailer, and it's small, but I kept slamming on the brakes to pull over and see that, and slamming on the brakes to pull over and see that. Well, when we went to have the brakes checked to take this big trip, oh my gosh, uh, we paid a heavy price for slamming the brakes on. Really, however, we had a great time. It's just now we don't normally slam the brakes on unless uh, we have already put the trailer in its location and we're out sightseeing with the vehicle. Okay, on the sky, I'm just going to use a little bit of ultramarine blue. I don't know. Can you see my colors there? Sometimes on the television it changes the colors, I know. But I've got ultramarine blue here. Here's my water. And I have my piece of Carhartt right here that I can dab my brush on when I want to. And as usual, I'm just mixing in a little bit of whatever's in here. There's some little stuff is still in this pan. I might take just a touch of that burnt umber, the darker of the two, and just slightly neutralize that sky color. So with that done, I'm going to, you don't have to do this, it just makes it a little easier. I have the laptop sitting right here, which helps me control what you're seeing. And so I've just leaned my little, this is just a little piece of plexiglass that I put tape around the edges so it wouldn't be sharp. And I tape my thing to it so I have a working surface that I can either turn, or what I'm doing now is putting it up on a slight slant so it's a little bit easier for me. And it helps keep some of the mess off the table. So I'm just going to take this light mixture that's we slightly neutralized. Now watch this. This is important here. I'm going to take my brush, take a little bit of the stuff off of it, clean it up just a little bit, and I'm going to get some green going over here. And what I want is, this is, I believe, azo green in my palette. You may have sap green or one of the others. But I'm going to mix up a fair batch of green here. I want it to be kind of light, and I want to have a bit of it ready. Okay. Oops, a little bit went in there. So if you want it just a little darker, you can take some of that burnt umber and put it in, and that khakis it up a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and take some sky color and just start. You can we've made skies before, so you can either take your sky color. Mine's a little green up there still, isn't it? Take some sky color. You can dry brush it if you want and leave some clouds in there. I want to make this a little bluer. It's gotten too greened for my taste. And I'm just going to come right over where those trees are. I'm not going to worry about breaking that line. I'm going to leave just a few little cloud indications here. You can do it differently if you want to. You can take some tissue paper like this one, and you can just paint it solid and make a puff with your tissue paper. You can use a paper towel, but it leaves a little bit of a pattern. If you use the tissue is softer, and you can have softer clouds like that. Okay, and I'm going to do this kind of quickly because I want to come down to the bottom here, and I want this to be damp. At the bottom edge right here, my leading edge, I'm going to leave it a little bit damp. And it's got the sky coming right into that line. So that's going to start drying just a little bit. And while that's working, got in the truck the next day, got in the truck, loaded up the broken Wi-Fi, and we drove the 54 miles. They said that they would replace it, so I drove out there. And when we got there, I stood in line at the Best Buy and got to the counter, and I said, okay, well, I called, and the Geek Squad said just to bring this in and we'd replace it, and I'd like to get another one. And the guy said, well, we don't do that. So I said, well, I just drove. Because it's 55 mile an hour and through mountains. Some of it's at 45 miles an hour. I just drove what is a 3.5 hour trip to come here and go back, and they told me that you would do this.
Yeah, they tell it goes under warranty.
So the next thing, take some of this green. Okay, you ready? And while that's drying, you can test it. You don't want it to totally smear out. See, that's still a little too damp. But you can do it if you just take just a teeny bit of that green and start working some light colored trees down in here. You start putting some down here because you just leave this, you're just making this kind of light. And as this gets dry enough, it's starting to right there where you can leave a little bit of a peak and it kind of fuzzes out just a little bit. You can start putting some of those, some of the forest that's way back there in there. And with this light color, you can just come in here on these bottom trees and put a few sky holes. You don't want to paint the barn, obviously. Keep coming over here. I'm going to keep putting in. You may not see them very well. They're a little too light. I think I'll make mine just a hair darker for this. And I'm going to come back, and we don't make mistakes in painting. We just go back and restate something. So, see how I'm restating where these trees were? Making a few little darks. I'm going to restate that one. And I'm just going to keep going with my color all the way across here. Still a little damp up there, so I'll work down on this bottom part a little bit and get it damp. So after discussing that with that gentleman, the people there for quite some time, the manager finally got frustrated with me because I refused to take no for an answer. And he went in the office and printed out the contract and highlighted the part where it said, no, we don't do that on your warranty. Won't take care of that. And I said, well, your people told me to. And I said, I got the guy's name. Go back there and talk to him. I said, his name is, and I mentioned the guy's name. And the manager says, when you talk to those people at the Geek Squad, none of them work here at this store. They're not here. And there is no way, apparently, but we'll get on to that. So, as this is drying, you let this part dry just a little bit, and we're going to do some other things. But while that's working, let's go ahead and get some ground cover in here, because that mine's a little wet. I don't know how dry or wet yours is. Whoa, the sun came out. Did you see that? Look how bright that is with the shadow where this is the shadow of the awning on our camper right there. So this ground color, see this right here? I am just going to make over here, I'm going to take, I don't know, a little yellow ochre like that. And maybe a little burnt sienna, the reddish brown, and a lot more yellow ochre. And I'm going to make this pretty thin and just kind of cover all the ground here, right? Right in here's an important one. See this where it comes right up to where your barn would be the bottom of it. And you can go right over these posts because we're going to probably make them a little darker. This ground, I'm making it pretty light. I want it to be kind of light, okay? I'm going to go ahead and come up here a little bit, but I may come back down with some more green there to bring the trees down a little further. A little more yellow ochre. And one thing you can do while you're doing this is mix it up. Part of that now I've made like that. I'm going to go ahead and add a little burnt umber and put some burnt umber in some areas. Over here, I'm going to add a little more yellow ochre and put that in and come right behind this tree just a little bit there. And I might put just a little bit of it right in here. Okay. And just keep kind of mixing the color up. You don't have to cover the whole ground. You could vignette it, leave some of it white. You can, again, you can dry brush some of it if you want to have that texture in there. Dry brushing is a great texture technique. And I'm just going to make a little bit darker here and put a couple of leading lines in there that'll probably just fade right into the okay. How much time we got here? Okay. We're moving right along. This is kind of drying up for me, so I'm going to get some darker of the green, a little bit richer color here. And I'm not going to get crazy. I am going to try and put just a few, oops, still not quite dry enough. See how it's breaking up and spreading out? I'm going to put a few in here and let them spread out a little bit. So that sun is playing heck with my video here. So these are just going to spread out and do the background here. They're just going to be way in the back. They're a little bit bigger than those trees were. I don't know what that sun's doing to the video.
Nothing. It's okay.
So we have, let's go ahead while that's drying. I'm going to bring this green down here just a little bit more before I move on. So I got very annoyed and talked to Sherry on the phone, and she said, well, we decided I just had to buy a new one because we couldn't, and these are expensive, you know. because we couldn't go without it. So bought a new one, came back, showed the people a receipt, and they paid me for it, which was I didn't want to charge them, but funds are what they are, money being money. So then a couple of days goes by, and because we're busy, we also had the grandson with us, right? A lot going on. So I get ready to do another broadcast, and it's like 2 days before, and I get on the phone and ask him, okay, how do I set this new one up? Uh, it's supposed to be 24/7 geek service with the plan that we had purchased. I called him on a Sunday. I talked to somebody in, I think, India who spoke broken English. I could not understand what he was saying. I said I was trying to get it hooked up to my old account and shut the old broken one down. So I'm not paying the exorbitant amount per month for one that's not working. And so he says, you know what? After this, first of all, on Sunday, I tried that and they said, okay, we'll get you a tech. And they left me on hold, no exaggeration, for almost 2 hours. That's not hyperbole. And then a message came on and it said, everybody's busy right now. Try again later. Ta-dum. So I was already fairly annoyed at the process. This is getting dry enough now, I think. You keep feeling yours and decide when it gets dry enough and test it. So I'm going to take some more dark green here. And as we keep doing this, we want to make greens that are. Now I can start just kind of putting in shapes of trees here and there. Right? They can meld a little bit. They don't have to be perfect trees. Um, so I decide to try again on Monday when it's a business day. And on Monday, I call them and I say, you see the little trees I'm doing here? Sorry. I keep interrupting myself, huh? I call them and I say, and I get the guy from India again, and sometimes they'll switch you to someone with English as a first language if they can't answer the problem. This guy said, okay, this is not working. What we're going to have to do is get you an appointment to get it fixed. I said, oh my gosh, man, I'm, 45 miles or 54 miles from the place. There's no way you can fix it over the phone. And no, we'll make an appointment for you. So I said, well, please make the appointment as soon as you can because we're supposed to leave here. We were scheduled to leave that campground and move to the next one. Well, which would be this one, which is that one's in Oregon and this one's in Washington. So anyway, he makes the appointment and he says, I can't do it on the date you want. You'll have to wait a few days. We're very busy. So they make the appointment, and the appointment is for 2 more days, which means that Sherry's got to get on the phone and call all these the places where we're camping and reschedule.
Make sure we can stay.
Make sure we can stay where we are. You hear her in the background? She's telling me that. She's got to make sure we can stay where we are and make sure we can get into the next place a couple days later. Because these places pack up in the summer, man. So she makes the changes. Thank you, Sherry. And we wait, and the time comes, and I take the new unit in, ready for them to hook it up. I drive all the way over there. Sherry and the dog go with me. We're planning a fun day. We'll go get this fixed, and then we'll go shopping, and because it's a town inland from us, and we'll enjoy the sunshine because we've been in the fog for a month now. So, okay, I'm going to leave those trees just the way they are, just like that. I walk in with the box and I walk over to the place, to the service department, and I said, I'm here I have an appointment with the Geek Squad to get this hooked up online. And, uh, and I said, I'm sorry, I think I'm 1 minute late. And the guy said, no, no, you're in time. But we don't do that. I said, what? He said, we don't. I said, I have an appointment to do that. I talked to the Geek Squad. They gave me an appointment to do this. He said, well, we don't do that. We don't work on those at all. We don't do anything with the. I said, but I bought it here just 3 days ago, or whatever it was, however many days. On the roof here, I'm going with a very light color to start, just so it has a little something in the background there. And I'm not coming all the way down because this roof may not come all the way down. I made it slightly differently. Here's this one. You see this light color in the back there? That's the first color I'm laying down. And to do that, I used a little bit of yellow ochre and burnt sienna. Made a very light color. Now be very careful that your trees are not so wet that the green trees are going to bleed into the roof, right? We don't want that bleeding in there. Meanwhile, I'm going to move along quickly here, and this little bush in front, I think I'm going to make it a light kind of I don't know. Maybe I'm going to I'm going to change it up just a little bit here. And watch this. This one you can see is kind of blue-green with a light green background. On this one, I'm going to, maybe, no, I won't. I'm going to make it blue. I'm going to make it blue-green. I'm just going to add a little bit of that ultramarine blue to the green mixture that I have with a little bit of the lemon yellow. See that right there? And I'm going to, not I'm going to make just a light background here. Okay, and you can go over your lines because you're going to make this one a little bit darker anyway, the shadow part. Watch out right here. It's going to blend with that barn color if you touch it. Do you hear that little bird in the background just chirp, 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 chirp? It's kind of an annoying chirp, to tell you the truth. I do love the birds, though. There's a lot of different ones out here.
Can you put up the picture that is colored?
Sure. Anybody want to see this? Here's the. Yeah.
Can you put it up there permanently?
No.
No. Okay.
See it there? Man, that bird will not stop. The bush behind it, I'm going to put a lot more blue in, make it even bluer, but still make a kind of a light background here, or the tree behind it, just to give it some differences here. You can go over your sky holes that you left there if you want to. If they have a little line there, you can scrub that just a little bit if you're using quality paper, and it should. Some of this will blend with the background it's kind of nice because gives it that soft effect. So you can let it blend a little bit. You can scrub the sky hole edges and they will blend in. See, they're not so outlined. You can bring this down, let it blend just a little bit with this one. We're just putting in the background, the light colors. I'm going to try and get rid of, you don't have to. Some people like to leave white spots. I'm going to try and get rid of most of mine in this particular drawing. No, I didn't put the, in answer to Sherry's question, she wanted to have the painting up there permanently. And I don't think, let me see, maybe I did. Let's see here. Not that one. That one's there. That one's that one. No, I did not put a picture of the big one in here. So while that's going on, let's come back with, if this is getting dry, it's not quite dry enough yet. We'll let that sit for just a few minutes. You can, of course, add a few more trees in here at any time. This is some of that blue mixture, so I'm putting, I guess, what kind of indicates some blue spruce in there. Just a few of them, a few little things like that. Man, that little bird, I hope he's okay. He's making, just keeps going.
It's fine.
Okay. Well, that's working. I'm going to go ahead and put some barn color in there. And on the barn and on the front, and on the house here, we're going to paint them with a little bit darker. I'm going to go ahead on the barn and use the burnt umber. That's the darker of the two browns. I'm just going to put a background color in there. We're going to come back and put some shadow and some lines, but I'm going to get this color in here. And this would be down here would be where the barn roof ends and the barn begins. I didn't do this on the original. There you go. And on the little building here, I'm going to take the same mixture, but I'm going to add just a little bit of blue to it and kind of make a light gray. Okay. This one was, I don't know, a faded color. It wasn't just wood. So this color, oops, that's a little just dirty. I think I'll make it a little bit bluer. Just a touch more blue so that it's a real blue. And you can, that's another thing you can do while you're painting this. Watch this. If you just paint straight across like this, then you get this perfect smooth painting. But it's really not nearly as interesting as if you take a little bit of the lighter one and put it in there, and a little bit of the darker one and put it in there, and just kind of mix it up so that you're not just putting the same thing in like I did on that dark brown there. You want it to have variation in it. Makes more interest. You can do some negative painting. I didn't do much of it here, but down where the grass comes up, you could negative paint around it. Just put little pieces in there like that, and and then when you come back with your foliage or vegetation, you can fill it in there. I'm jumping around quickly now because our time is going by. So I'm going to go back to, let's see, the forest. And I'm going with even a little bit darker, just a green here. Just almost a straight green with just a touch of ultramarine blue in it to make it kind of dark. And I'm going to throw in a few more trees here, and I'm starting to get a little bit more uh, careful about the trees that I put in here, trying to make them resemble at least a little bit of a pine tree. Just make a skinny line and put a few little squigglies coming down. It's a little wet over there, but that's okay. Put one right here on the edge. Mm. Okay, and while that's drying up, I'm going to come back here, and this this tree right here is kind of drying. So I'm going to try. I've messed up the color that was there, but I'm going to try and get just a little more ultramarine blue in here so that it's similar to that. And just put in some, it is in shadow. I'm going to negatively paint some things into the top of this tree so that it has some character to it. I'm not going to get too serious about this, but just putting in some little marks that kind of indicate that there might be that there's a shadow there. And I'm coming down much darker as we come down here. I'm making it more solid and coming into this other bush that's here, negatively painting it so that there's a bush there. You can take some of these edges and fade them out, clean your brush a little bit, and just make a soft, what they call lost and found edges. Some of them you can leave sharp, and some of them you can just go back and soften up a little bit. It's all just a practice in technique. I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom of this tree, this bush, right? I'm going to put even a little bit more blue in there. And start just coming in here, leaving little bits. It might be the kind of bush that has longer lines or something. I'm just kind of putting some. We're not trying to exactly copy a bush. We're trying to indicate these trees. Put a few of them just hanging out here, maybe a loose thing here. And we'll let those dry. Now, if you go back to your roof, where these angles are right here, they have, right there's where the shingles. So you want to kind of indicate shingles. And I'm going to do it in a few different colors. Here we go again. I'm going to kind of clean this palette out because it got a little messy here. I'm going to put a little yellow ochre in here, and I've got a little, I think, burnt sienna on my brush. But I'm not going to make this too dark. I'm just going to come in and kind of put some color in here. Some areas, a lot of colors, some areas less. That's still a little dark, I think, so I'm going to try and lighten this up a little bit. And do the same thing coming down here. I'm just putting some in here because we're going to come back with a third layer in just a moment. The roof of the shed is a gray, so I'm mixing a little bit of that ultramarine uh, a green mixture that I had for the bushes with a little bit of the burnt sienna or umber, either one. And that is much darker than I really want it. So I'm going to go in and with a little bit of moisture on my brush, I dried most of it off. I'm just going to reduce there you go, the weight of that because I want it to be light. Remember, this area here, we want to be probably close to the lightest that we did. I go in and put just a little red in here in the barrel with oil drum. There was a guy selling these by our house before we left. I really want one, but I don't know why I want one. I have no place to put it and nothing to put in it really. It's just I like them. And anyway, I think he wanted like $75 for them now or something. They're getting up there. They're getting expensive. I'm going to make the right edge of this. Oops. I'm not going to make any of it lighter. I'm just going to leave it as is. Let that dry up. These trees, let's just go ahead and make those big kind of, we'll take some sap green to begin with. Oh, Sherry's running out of green, and that's because I have not restored her green in her thing. I'm falling behind on what I should be doing. I'm just going to put these in here like this. And you can make that sap green with a little of the dark yellow, the cadmium yellow. That's the one in the middle. A little touch of ultramarine blue. And a small touch of the lightest of the two browns. We'll make that green. Let me get these trees kind of damp here. And once I get them a little moist, I'm going to bring in some darker colors, some ultramarine blue into the thing and a little bit more of the green. So I have a little bit darker. And I'm not going to put it everywhere. I'm just going to let it kind of move in and spread out. Let the watercolor do its thing. Just so that they have a little bit of movement in them.
Excuse me.
Over here, this is starting to dry up. But first, I think this roof is about, no, not yet. Let's do that one. I'm going to go over here in my little blue spot. And I'm going to make a really pretty dark shadow color. We have a problem where we are, and that is, I don't know if anybody's over here on a coast anywhere, but we are currently, as you know, on the west coast, the northern west coast. So the temperatures are low, the humidity is up there, and things don't dry very quickly. So down here on the bottom, now see this little thing? I'm going to leave that little teeny piece of light showing through there, as though there, like that. But I'm going to put some darker shadows in here. And I'm going to come down here, and these shadows kind of connect. I used ultramarine blue, a little bit of burnt umber, that's the darker of the two browns, kind of playing with my shadow. You can play with shadows. A lot of people like to put purple shadows in. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to do super realistic colors. And I'm just putting a little bit of shadow here where the building might be. Remember, it slants a little bit. It's not a direct shadow. But I'm leaving that little bit of light so you can see behind the building there. And I'm going to put some pretty dark shadow right over this part right here. I may even come back with another layer of shadow on this at a later stage. While I'm doing that, I can put just a little line under here because this would have some shadow. And this area would have some shadow. I'm going to start darkening up this door because this door actually is not a door, it's just a hole in the thing. Okay. Take some of that same type of mixture and put it the whole front of the barn here. I'm not sure if it totally makes sense for the sun, but you know, John Singer Sargent, if you know that painter, he did both watercolor and oil. He was famous for his portraiture in oil, but then he loved watercolor and it became his obsession in his, after he was very successful with his oils, he just did a lot of landscapes with watercolor. Anyway, he tended to put shadows wherever he wanted them to emphasize or to fix the painting or to make the painting look the way he wanted it to. Not necessarily where the sun might be shining or on the opposite side of the sun shining. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Put some shadow in here, but I don't want to shadow my little red thing too much. And I might even come up into the tree a little bit with my shadows. Same on these trees, a little darker to the left side and the bottom. And here's Sherry over there. She's trying to dry something. So I'm moving rather quickly, especially for this humidity. If you're back home where we are in New Mexico, probably dried right away. But And while I have this out, I'm going to go ahead and put the shadows on the little sticks here that I have not even painted in yet. And this little piece right here of the barn, I'll put that in shadow. Okay, and while that's drying, I'm going to come back with one last pass of, I'm going to use burnt sienna and a little bit, I'm going to use a light color. I'm going to put some cad yellow in my burnt sienna. So it makes it a little bit lighter, brighter color. And I'm going to come back in here still one more time and just throw some little spots, not necessarily over the whole thing, but and not covering everything, but just a few more little sideways glance. And be sure and leave some of the others, some of the old stuff showing. So my barrel, I think I took too much paint off. It's not as red as I'd like it to be, so I'm going to play with that a little bit. Doo-doo-doo. With a liner or your smallest, pointiest brush, I'm going to come back in here. I take some pretty dark color that I have, whatever it is. I've got that dark shadow color. And I'm going to put a few pieces in here, let it fade out. If it's wet, it's okay. Makes it look older. Put a few lines that are coming down. And I'm going to do similar thing on the roof of the shed or whatever this is. I hate to tell you how bad I was of a driver. But I think I took this picture while we were driving by while I was driving. I just took the phone and kept driving and clicked a bunch of shots. And this was one, and prayed for the best. And this was one of them. This was one of those shots. Let's go ahead and make a little bit light and lighter color, but I put a little bit more of the burnt sienna in it, and we'll start these posts. I left that spot. You can make these posts not so perfect too. See how I made them almost perfect. It's probably better if you put some knots in them, like a little edge there and here and there. Well, you can make them perfect if you want to. Well, you should take your phones, and I'm going to put the picture up here in just a minute. Just take your phones and take a picture here. I've got this a little bit light here. I missed it, just, I don't know why. I was going to put shadow there, but I'm not going to. And I'm going to take a little of that same color and put just a few things in here. A little something like as though there wasn't all just one color of stuff. You can just get a little water on your brush and do the old splatter thing. And if you get a splatter somewhere that you didn't want it to be, you can either dab it off, or you can take your brush and clean brush and just lightly hit it. Usually they'll go away. I'm kind of wanting a little bit darker trees in the far background while this is all drying up. So I'll just put a few indications back there and a few more things in here. These are just a very light color that I mixed up real quick. Mm. And then changing just a little bit of this because it didn't come out quite the way I wanted it to. And you can, while that's doing that, you can come back and put some, I did them with fountain pen on the other one, but I'm using just a number 3 pencil here. If you have a soft one, might even work better, like a number 4 pencil or a number 5. There are some slats or boards in the shed here. And you can do some of the same thing with the barn. I'm going to take my liner, add a little bit of the dark. We're getting close to the end here, 20 minutes. I'm going to darken this up, this deep shadow right under where the eave of the barn is. You don't have to do it straight like I am. It's probably better if you don't, if you kind of make it, not so perfect. And I'm going to throw in a couple of lines here in the barn. I might outline part of the door that we put in there. And I may do just a couple of the same thing here, on the shed here. One thing you can do, put this darker under the eave there. One thing you can do is to make it look older, you can do thick and then real thin, and don't do the whole thing. Like there were some holes going into the wall, especially down around the bottom. Sometimes they rot from the bottom up and leave a hole. I'm going to make the window and the door of the shed very dark, like they were more like they were open, like there is no door or window there, just a hole. Warming up finally out here. It was chilly this morning. It's not bad. It's only, I think, 62 for the high. You can also take your pencil or whatever you have and put just a few branch marks in the bush, in the tree. You can put little spots if you want. You can also do that trick there with a thumbnail if it's still wet enough. Mine's not, but you can thumbnail out some white spots. And as a last little thing, I think we're getting close to the end here. I'm going to put some little, few little yellow flowers here with some very thick cadmium yellow paint. Just put a few dots here and there. And if your post is dry, your fence post, you can come in with a little bit of shadow on the left side. If you have something, don't worry about it. If you don't have something small enough to just put in a shadow, don't worry about doing it. But if you just put a little shadow on the left, and for those of you who want, you should go ahead and get your camera ready. Let's see. We've got a few minutes, but if you want to get your phone up and ready, I will take the I'm going to enlarge a pattern and give you just a few moments where if you take your phone, you can take a picture of that pattern and you'll have it if you want to try this again. The pattern's really just my original drawing. I did part of it in pencil and then inked it in. And it's not quite actually what was there, but close. But it's pretty close. I like the color I did on the ground here better. Hopefully you got your picture if you wanted it. And let's see, I can turn that one off, turn that one on. There we go. So here's the original one. I like this lighter ground that I did here. I think I might in the original one, I think I might have done better to pull the forest a little further down. It does go uphill here, but I didn't really indicate that. Just left that ground in there. So it kind of looks like the ground goes uphill from the whole thing here. And then in the new one, I think if it was dry, I would make the shadow side even just a hair darker on these three items here, these three things. I'm afraid they're pretty close to damp. Let's see. We have a couple moments here. I'm going to try and put just one more light wash over this area. And the same here. What's missing though is like that barn. I don't know if I'm going to have time for it to dry, but you would probably do better if you made the window right here dark and the barn, the window up on top dark and the door a little darker. And the reason is there's several ways to attract the eye's attention. One of which is with a sharp line. One of it is with, uh, excuse me, color, the difference in color. And another one is in value, the difference in values of things. So anyway, drove all the way out there and went to Best Buy and told them the Geek Squad made an appointment, and they said, "Well, we don't do that." So now it's been a week, and we've missed the second lesson, and I still don't have Wi-Fi. So I'm obviously pretty annoyed. I go out to the car, Sherry's with me, and she says, "Well, just return that one and get another one because we can't get this one to work. Maybe it's broken and we'll just get a new one." And she was right. So I returned that one, went back in the store and returned it. And the fun part, here's the fun part of the story is the one I returned, they happened to be on sale after I returned them. And so I got the new one, $200 cheaper. And finally, Sherry helped me and we fought with it. We had to close that account, reopen a new account, and finally we got it hooked up. But absolutely no help from the Geek Squad. They just were on that particular subject. If apparently they do well if you have a computer, but if you're buying Starlink from them, don't anticipate that there's any kind of service, even if you pay for a service warranty. So the service warranty just covers if it is, I don't even know what it covers because we had one we couldn't hook up and they made an appointment for me. And again, he told me those people are not in this store. The people who they, and that was his answer. In other words, not that they screwed up, not that they made me drive all that distance, but just that we don't have those people in my store. I don't know who's making those appointments. Hmm. Well, it makes for a great story. I hope you enjoyed today. We're coming to the end here. Hope you ended up with a picture, and we'll see you next Wednesday at 10 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, 9 o'clock here on the coast. Have a great one. Hope you're painting. Oh, one last thing. Don't for put for don't forget to put your Mrs. John Hancock on the bottom, or Ms.
Mister.
or Mr. And I always put a little bit of a date. So there it is, the 24th year. Wow, already. I never thought I'd live to see the 1970s. Crazy. Have a great week, guys. See you next Wednesday.